I'm going to show you how to make the border of a Polaroid picture so that we can have that little white border around our painted square in the center. We want to make sure we have our ruler and a 2H pencil and our piece of paper, which should be 4 inches by 6 inches. Eventually we're going to trim the bottom off a little bit, but for right now, you should have your 4 by 6 inch paper. So first I'm going to kind of point out on the ruler what mark we're going to be using. So we're going to use the 1/4 inch, which is this line right here. So if we look at our whole inch here, if we haven't used our ruler skills in a while, this longer line in the middle, that's our 1/2 inch. And then our slightly shorter but still longer line in between our 0 line and our 1/2 inch line is the 1/4 inch line. So 1/4 inch or 0.25 inches. Make sure that when you are using your ruler, this line is what you're lining things up with, not the edge. You want to make sure it's lined up with the 0 line. Like if I'm going to measure from the edge of my paper, notice how some of my ruler is sticking out because I'm lining up the 0 end line with the edge of my paper. Then from here, you're going to make a mark 1/4 inch in. I'm not going to stop right there. I need to do another one. That's going to ensure that my line is actually straight and parallel with the edge of my paper. So I'm going to take that 0 line right here and line it up with the edge of my paper. Then make a mark at the 1/4 inch spot. I'm going to rotate my paper just so it's easier to keep track of. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm making 2 little dashes along the left top and the right side, right here. So I'm lining up the 0 line, mark at my 1/4 inch, slide it up a little bit. Making sure my 0 line's actually in line, mark at my 1/4 inch, and then I'll rotate again. It's important that you make 2 hash marks along the side, otherwise your line could be really crooked when you go to make that. So I'm going to come back to this other side where I made my 2 dashes, and really lightly, because I don't want a really dark border around my drawing or my painting, I want a nice light one. I'm going to make sure that my ruler is lined up with those 2 dashes. I'll just kind of slide it to the side so you can kind of see my 2 marks. I'm going to shimmy the ruler up right next to them, but just so you can still see them. And then you're going to bring your line all along the ruler. Make sure that your ruler doesn't slide by kind of spreading your hand out. Let's move my hand a little bit so you can see. But I always kind of spread my fingers out wide so that the ruler doesn't slide. If you hold it in one spot, it's going to swivel. So make sure you have it held in 2 spots so it doesn't swivel around. All right, I'm going to rotate it. I always find if you're right-handed to have the ruler on the left and then pencil on the right. But if you are left-handed, let's see, I would turn it this way and then make your line this way. So I'm going to rotate it because I am right-handed. So I'm going to line my ruler up to those 2 dashes again, just so they're still visible so I can actually make the line right on top of them and all the way across. Same thing on my 3rd side. Line my ruler up with the dashes, make that line. Oops, sorry, I was a little off camera there. So right now we have our left, top, and bottom borders. What we're going to do now, we're going to take our ruler and we're going to measure the space from this end to this end. So again, I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to line my 0 line up with the line that I made here, and then I'm going to measure across to this space right here. This might differ a little bit just because the paper cutter I use is not actually perfect, so I would go off of this measurement that you find here instead of me just telling you like 3.5 inches, because ordinarily, yes, it would be 3.5, but that would be right here. So I'm going to go 3.5, but then 2 more lines. That's at least my measurement right here. So I'm going to keep that measurement in mind. I'm going to rotate my paper and do the same length that it was this way and make a mark from the top. So for me, it was 3.5 and then 2 more lines. But I'm, remember, not just going to make 1, I'm going to make 2. so that I can make this nice and parallel. And as always, I'm lining up my 0 line with this drawn line. So now this should be the bottom of my Polaroid. I'm going to line up my 2 lines. So right now we have a huge space at the bottom. What you're going to do is you're just going to measure 1 inch below that. So I'm going to line up my 0 line on this bottom line we just made, make a mark at my 1 inch, slide it over, make another mark at my 1 inch, line those up, and this will be my last line that I have to draw before I do a little bit of erasing and cutting. Okay. So right now we should have an exact square in the center, and then a 1/4 inch on these 3 sides and 1 inch on this side. I'm going to go ahead and take an eraser. I'm going to erase just the parts that actually stick out into the white border because we don't need those. All right, now what we're going to do is take a pair of scissors and cut this off right here, 1 inch below our square. All right, so there we have it, our Polaroid measurements. So the next step you would do is to do the same thing on 2 more pieces of paper because this is a triptych. So we're doing 3 of the Polaroid paintings. And then you're going to take a roll of tape and you're going to tape down the border so that no paint gets on them and the edges can stay nice and clean. So I'm going to take my tape and I'm very carefully going to lay the tape right on the edge of my pencil line all the way around. If you know that you're a really messy painter and you might accidentally get paint on this little bottom strip, just in case, I'm going to take a second piece of tape and we'll just cover up that last little section of white paper that's showing. And you should have a nice border of tape that lines up right on those pencil guidelines that you made. And then you are ready to begin painting your Polaroid triptychs.